The world of work is in constant flux. You agree about that? We are facing challenges unlike any seen before: rapid technological advancement, shifting demographics, and a growing demand for purpose driven work. One data that is quite impactful is that the average employee experiences 12 organizational changes per year. And the worst is that people who are enduring these organizational changes, 73% feel overwhelmed by the amount of change at work. That's a big number, highlighting just how difficult it is for organizations to adapt and thrive in this environment. And the cost of not changing, potentially catastrophic. But what if there was a better way? What if we could move beyond reactive fixes and instead proactively design the evolution of work within our organization? That's exactly what we are going to be discussing today in the Growth Hacking Culture podcast. We are diving into the practical elements of organizational change with our guest, Elvira Kalmar. Uh, yeah, let me tell you a little bit more about Elvira. Elvira is a leading expert in organizational design and development. She has over 20 years of experience in the field and is the founder of the Go Beyond project. The Go Beyond project helps our companies become more adaptable and agile. And about the topic today, we are going to be discussing how to shift from outdated mechanistic approaches to a more organic, evolutionary view of organizations. We'll be tackling some critical questions like how can we redefine organizational design to become an ongoing process? What are the parallel realities within organizations? How do they impact agility? How can understanding the influence of context empower individuals in their roles and careers? And most importantly, what are the actionable steps you can take today to start designing the work evolution within your own organization? Elvira, it is lovely to have you with me today.
Thank you, Ivan. Hey, and what a wonderful introduction and start of the podcast. I,
Listen, you deserve it. You deserve it because you have some great news that you will tell me a little bit more about it.
I will definitely, and I just have to start with kind of already reflecting on what you said. Change and how much it's draining and how difficult it is and how to manage change. Oh God, we never think actually about why is it so difficult. And the answer is very simple. It's because how we are doing it, yeah, mainly not involving the people who are actually impacted by the change. And yeah, having change implied on you 12 times a year, it's kind of a massive emotional drain. Instead, for example, being able to 12 times redesign the work you are doing, yeah, slightly different connotation. And it comes back, of course, to how we are thinking about change. And my best hope is that I can change people's glasses, maybe your glasses also, or to our listeners' glasses as well,
This
how
one.
they look at change and how they think about change. Yeah.
Elvira, but you have highlighted the challenges that organizations have. Isn't it because they suck at understanding human psychology? Because for no one, you or me, we have got several instances in life where we wanted to change something and it was bloody difficult. But organizations forget that they are dealing with humans and it's normal.
Yeah, and let me start kind of changing the game here. Organizations are us. So it's us people, it's not some sort of distant creations that look after us or terrorize us or exploit us. It's us people. And I think the one side of the story is very much that we forget about the psychological impacts of things. And on contrary, the other thing is that I would like to talk a bit more about is how we create a system out of our agreements in an organization and how these agreements influence the behavior of people in organizations. Yeah, and that's one of the things which is, on one hand, I would say, super scary, that it's not us and them. Yeah, it's all us. This is we are. And it's also super empowering if we realize that this is really us making these agreements. We created, for example, the centralized decision making in our organization, and then we complain that the people are not making initiatives and they not trying to better the processes that we have. We shouldn't wonder about it. Why? It's the decisions, the agreements we have made that influence the behavior of people. And of course, their personality and their previous experiences will influence as well. But on the other hand, I think in organization development, we took for decades too much, or we put too much focus on the behavioral sciences and the behavioral background, and we forgot about the systemic background.
Elvira, I have the impression that organizations very often use the same old ingredients to create new soups. And one of these old ingredients is a traditional way of dealing with organization design. And in previous discussions, I understood that you have a different view about how to deal with organization design. How your approach is different from the traditional approach. And what does it mean to have OD, organization design, as an ongoing process rather than a one-time project, which is what usually organizations do?
I have to go a little bit back in my own personal history to kind of give a context of how I understood this as well. I've also learned traditional organization development. I have been at one point the chair of the Hungarian Organization Development Association. At the same time, I've met my organization design colleagues who are mainly coming from the Anglo-Saxon world, talking about organization design. I wanted to learn everything about that as well. I even chaired the organization design forum at one point, parallel with the Hungarian OD Association. And I was amazed how wanting in both professional organizations, 98% of the members are external consultants. And in our words and in our language, what we are using and in all the definitions you can read in the books are coming from the assumption that the organization is not developing or not designing itself as long as the external consultants don't come. And then we start a project. And for that project, we need, of course, kind of a commitment from the top of the organization. It has to be planned, designed. Hear the words. This is all a waterfall process, yeah? We come, we plan, and then we implement the plan. We diagnose also at the beginning. I'll come back to that later. And then I worked from these pre-assumptions also for a long time because that's what you can read in 98% of the books, even nowadays, which is all coming from this mechanical approach that we might come back a bit later in our conversation to. And then I took a position within a large organization. And then I saw what's happening really there. So, for example, to get to a point to get an external consultant in whichever org development and design topic or culture development or leadership development, incredible amount of work has been done, preparation work by the people in the organization. You have to convince, whisper, challenge people until the organization is ready for kind of a bigger, taking a bigger breath and venturing into these bigger projects. And then I went further. I was a leader, so I was leading a team of 12 people in the beginning, 35 at the end. It became a kind of a a bigger unit. It's on HR. Our counterpart was procurement, because of course we were bringing in a lot of external people. And when I saw that our processes were like they were actually from the 1900s, from the 20th century, and we are already in the 21st century, and we could do things so much better and simpler and easier. And I walked across to the other room where our procurement partner was sitting, and I told her, hey, why don't we do this differently? It's easier for you, easier for me, faster for our clients. And she said, yeah, that's a great idea. Let's do it. And then, and here I come back. And then we come to the situation, yeah, it's great. You and I agreed. But we have to tell our bosses, because it's a traditional hierarchical organization. And so we said, okay, each of us will go to our own bosses and tell them that we could do things better with greater customer satisfaction and less efforts needed. And then we went to our bosses, and both of our bosses kind of freaked.
Typical.
Because you can't just walk across from one silo to another and make an agreement. And here's my point. You can. And I've done it 1,000 times, and I see people doing it all the time in every organization. So people make new agreements in organizations, and we don't wait for the consultants to come. Yeah. Mm-hmm. And that part of organization development and design that is happening actually every day in the organization, most of the books, the models, the definitions kind of have a blind spot for. And we only talk about it when there is a big project. And kind of my mission has become to empower the people in organizations with the tools that some of the tools are coming from the external consultancy, but there are a lot of other tools also, to use these wisely, make these agreements consciously, and then because we're doing this, we're just not conscious about it, that we are constantly evolving, developing our agreements. So we are developing our organizations actually.
There are two things that struck me. One is when you are mentioning about this waterfall approach about change. So there is requirements made by an HR person, maybe some mid-management person who is writing 20 to 50 pages about why do we need change and how much it's going to cost. It makes me think about IT. In fact, that's
how it was, yeah, until we figured out that there is a better way.
Exactly. So by the time that you do your business case, this business case is approved, requirement, the vision, the way of doing things have changed. So it is too late because a change doesn't last 1 month or 2 months. It is a long-lasting stuff. So as you say, there is a need of agility, of looking at managing the project in a different way. That's one of the things that struck me. The second one is about the need of consultants. Do you need really a consultant to implement the change? Or can you just ask, have like a type of an advisory board, a little bit like the approach that you are taking, instead of saying, I'm going to manage it, but how do we consultants know what exactly are the process? We can just advise because we have different resources, but we cannot just go and pay $200,000, $1 million when we are talking about the big consultants for managing change. And then they are not accountable about the results of the change. So they don't give a shit. So basically they have sold you slides, PowerPoints to convince management.
And I have to connect to that, Ivan, because of course you already need to know that the organization design profession already grew out of that practice, that the big four type of consultants, or they don't have to be big, the I come and assess and tell you what to do type of consultants, especially with large organizations, leave the suggestions, yeah, and the project is usually completed there. Sometimes nowadays they involved in some sort of change management also. But then what? The organizations, the ideas are magnificent. I'm right now in a project with a large organization. One of these big consultancy firms just redesigned how they should operate. Super clever people, super smart solutions, make sense, everything. But now they are standing there, and the question is, how are we going to make our people actually do what's on the slides?
Mm.
And here comes the solution-focused approach that I would like to bring into this equation. So in my work, I'm combining organization development and design because you can't do one without the other. That's a strong statement already. And we can create change differently. Not the only way is not to assess, understand the root cause, understand the problem, and then design a better version of it, and then transfer the organization or society or whatever from A to B. And the wonderful thing that the solution-focused approach brings in, and it's coming from family therapy, coaching, it's used worldwide. It's coming from Enzo Kimbeck's and Steve DeShazer's discovery that the solution has no relation with the problem.
Huh.
And you have to think back what Einstein was saying, that to be able to solve a problem, you have to change a paradigm, yeah? You can't solve the problems in the same paradigms where you have created them. And this already is talking about this evolution. So if we assess the situation, diagnose, and I have to come back to this because this is still the traditional consultancy approach. Consultants come in, they do a diagnosis, we understand the problem, the root cause of the problem, 3 to 6 months is invested into this. What are we talking about? We're talking about the things that do not work. And at the end, the consultants either give us a solution in org design mainly, or involve some people into designing the new. Yeah, and then we try to implement that. And how long does the implementation take? I've been working on this field, so I can tell you. So a 6 months planning process, 1.5 year implementation. So by the time actually the organization works in a way that the consultant suggested, with a lot of effort invested, it takes about 1 year to 1.5 years. Who has that much time today? Or the world is changing so fast around us that by the time you implement what you designed 1.5 years ago, kind of the train has already left the station, and where are you? And here I'm coming back again to the other beautiful thing of the solution-focused thing. It says that it's not that we have to agree on what is the problem right now on the level of an organization. We have to agree on where we are going. And if we can agree on where we are going, then we can figure out 2 things. What's already working like that? Because we always have in every organization, in every team, in every individual's life, also forerunners of this preferred future, of this wished future. Let me tell you an example. You want to be agile as an organization. Look around. How many people, teams already are working in some sort of agile way, and build on that. So don't implement it top down, structure-based agility. Yeah, doesn't take you far or nowhere near to agility, I can promise that. So we don't have time. So we don't have to understand the problem. We have to understand where we are going. We have to understand what we can build on, and then we can make small steps, small but steady steps. So we all know, you also wrote in your article recently that 70% of these big change programs fail because the organizations are not good enough to implement the changes suggested. Yeah, because they are marvelous changes, but you could sell them to this company or that company. It doesn't come from the organization. It's too big a change. It's scary. And instead of that, you can actually rely on the resources and the knowledge of the organization. And that's another kind of basic assumption we are working with. Every organization has all the knowledge it requires to make a step forward in its own evolution. Yeah, so not to become what the consultants think it should become, but the next step. And here comes another interesting aspect: who should be involved into these processes? Yeah, because big consultancy firms, I'm going to now talk about my parallel realities, they see the organizations in their formal structure. Their solutions are going to address the formal structure of the organization. Yeah. So this is why you get a blueprint, and then you have to try to implement the blueprint. The interesting thing is that if you involve the members of the organization, yeah, so it's not equal with just working, for example, with the management team. So who has the knowledge of the organization? It's the wrong assumption that people sitting on the top have it. Yeah. And most of these consultancy companies are working only with the top people. Now, the knowledge is there, but we call, or I call, is the intellect of the organization, yeah, or the intelligence of the organization. But to tap into that, you have to tap into or invite the right people. And the right people are the people who are doing the work, who are meeting your customers, yeah. So you're not getting some sheets and feedback forms, but you actually involve into a process the people who meet your customer, and when they deliver, for example, your product, they see how happy or unhappy they are. They might actually even have conversations with them, and they know what you should do differently. So if you ask the people in the organization, what is it that we should do differently to achieve what we all together want to achieve, they can tell you. And I've been doing this now for 20 years, over 20 years, and I never ever fell into a situation when the people would not have known what is it that they should be doing instead of what they are doing. But the problem is we focus too much on this formal structure and our job descriptions instead of some other parallel realities. So we all know that besides the formal structure, there is an informal structure, which is our social connections, but that's not it. And that's where we stop, and then that's where we have to go beyond, because there are other realities. For example, the value creating reality in the organization. People who work together on a topic, on a project, on a process, and that's changing. That's a pulsating reality. So I usually tell people, how can you kind of realize this? Have a look in your calendar. With whom did you have intensive conversations, meeting at any given time? It's changing. Yeah. The organization has its own way of adapting to what needs to be done now, but we just watching the kind of the formal structure. And for example, agility lives in the value creating reality. Yeah. How do we create value for our customers? Who has to work together to make that happen? Yeah. So addressing the issue in the formal structure, it's kind of a recipe for disaster already. So copying the Spotify model, copying holocracy, sociocracy. Oh, lots of stories about bad implementations. And on the other hand, failing to understand the idea, organize yourself around the work that needs to be done now, not in general. Yeah, but for that, we have to know what is the work we have to do now. And that's my point. The work is changing. We're not repeating the same things anymore, like by the conveyor belt.
And that's what you have mentioned about changing the paradigm, the way we do things, is quite powerful. It's powerful, but it's a pity that even the most expensive consultants don't think about it, changing the way the processes, forgetting about these business cases. If people want, the organization needs to know exactly if their employees are unhappy about the change or currently with the current situation. You don't need to spend $100,000 in a bloody survey when The senior management
You
knows
walk through the dining room or stand in the queue at the coffee
exactly.
place, and you will know it. Yeah.
There is better processes to do it, better agility, the design thinking approach, the agile approach to find out doing it like you were a startup, asking questions directly instead of having a survey done by a market research company who will charge you your eyeballs, and then you don't have any money to make your people happy. And that paradigm change is something that is still very difficult to crack for the traditional organizations and for our peer consultants.
And
Now,
yeah.
Elvira, I was lucky enough to have a peek view of the outline of your upcoming book, where you challenge the traditional mechanistic and algorithmic view of these organizations. Uh, let's dig a little bit more. What are the real limitation of these perspectives, and why an organic, and you have to explain me what is organic, evolutionary view is more relevant today?
Okay, it's a very good question and a very good time, Ivan, because this is exactly what I wanted to tell you. Kind of outsourcing things, looking at organizations in a mechanistic view is actually depersonalizing the organizations and the people in them. So what actually the mechanistic view does, and this is of course coming from the conveyor belt and the industrial revolution, and we shouldn't be surprised that the metaphors they use, Taylor, for example, he's the kind of the father of all the management studies, are coming from the machines, yeah? And they look at an organization as a large machine. People are particles in it, yeah, who work together, and you can actually define each particle's work. If the particle is not working, not functioning perfectly, you change the gear, yeah, you change that particle. What is change in this approach? When the machine breaks down, yeah, then we have to fix the machine. Then comes all the whole engineering world. So we identify where the machine is broken, we fix it, and then we think the machine will work again. So these are actually the words we are using for change also. You can even hear when people say, yeah, change is coming and it's going to be difficult. The clouds are dark above us. But once we are through this process, then the sun will come out again and it will be again like this, beautiful green grass and blue sky, and we're going to live happily ever after the change. And it's like, come on, come on, yeah? It's definitely not like this. Maybe these metaphors and maybe these approaches could work in the early 1900s, maybe in the very early 2000s, because I also remember that at the beginning of my career, we designed, for example, or we planned strategic plans for 5, 10, 15 years. Yeah, these were the three
Oh,
horizons.
yes.
You remember it also. And if today you do this, yeah, okay, so the world changed, which is great. But not just the world changed. I mean, I have to come back to this a little bit. The work is changing just because of what you are doing, because of the maturity of your product or service. So one of my favorite models is Isaac Adizeshi's life cycle model. Super nicely explains. In the beginning, you do something to find how your product or service should be. You try to find a product market fit. I work a lot with startups, so it's a wonderful period in their life. But when you do find it and then you start selling, then of course the work is different. Yeah, now it's sales focused. And then when you sell, and then you might not deliver in great quality, then you start standardizing your processes. Yeah, and the work is different. Then you are kind of mass producing or scaling up what you did before. So the work, what we have to do around the product or a service is changing because of its maturity. So change is not just coming because we live in this fast-paced world and now we have to change constantly. So anyway, you have to change. Then what's going on in the external world is speeding it up. Yeah. And what's also speeding it up is, and then I'll come to the algorithmic view, is what technology allows us, what type of organizations we can build. When suddenly the whole globe is your market, labor market also as kind of a market where you can sell your product and service. And then there are these organizations who grow like mushrooms because they use tech, data. I'm talking about the platform-based organizations. Where now let's notice the parallel. So traditional organizations are too slow to take up the speed with these, yeah? They enter the market super fast, they disrupt industries, fantastic. But here comes again the kind of the second wave of danger that we start talking about organizations as operating softwares and algorithms, and we dehumanize it again, depersonalize, dehumanize. Yeah, the algorithm is set. Who sets the algorithm? Us, people.
Exactly.
And these organizations are also, they're very good to notice when they have to change something because they work database, so they notice everything fast and they change the algorithms super fast. So organizations are not algorithms. They are still agreements between people that we are happy to work together to achieve something together. And then here I come back to this organic approach. So a system that is actually built on or by living creatures, us, cannot be a machine. Yeah. If the particles are living things, they come together. A team is a living thing also. Yeah. We breathe, we live, we do some things together, we change, we talk, we interact. And as you scale it up, it's the same for the organizations. So organizations are just a group of people who agreed to do some work together. Yeah. And we constantly make new agreements and we constantly recontract with each other. And of course, with this depersonalization and dehumanization, we forget about this. Yeah. But it's all there still in every organization. And then suddenly people talk about, yeah, but our processes are, what is a process, Ivan? It's a group of people who work along that thing and they make agreements how we are going to do this. Yeah. So the process is not when it's kind of recorded in ARIS, a wonderful kind of chart. A process is again a sum of agreements people who work together make how we are going to make this thing from the beginning till the end so that we can kind of have the product or the service and the happy customer. And what this means is that we're not victims of these processes. So if you want to develop your processes or make them more efficient, again, you can invite the consultants to tell you how would it be ideal, or you actually can have the people who are working along that process sit together and ask the question, guys, how should we do this better? And the problem here, and just one sentence, and then I let you ask. And the problem here is, again, comes back this mechanistic view. These people sit in different boxes in the organization. Okay, now it's time to take that glasses off. Yeah, put it aside. They might sit in different boxes. They might have different bosses. Who cares? Make them sit together, the bosses as well, and make new agreements. And then you can do the process differently from tomorrow. I have thousands of cases like that. It works. Yeah.
I really love your vision about how to produce change. And funny enough, you ignited the nerd or the geek on me. And I was thinking, but this lady, Elvira, is talking about a little bit like the duality of particles. She's talking about quantum physics. In fact, this duality between, at the beginning, we thought that a particle is just the speed of a particle is this distance divided by the time. And then there was this guy, Einstein, who comes and say, no, particles are not mechanic. Our particles are waves. So it's different. They can have different states. They can jump from one side to another quantum state. And what you're telling me is that change has the same duality as quantum physics.
My kind of parallel is in my narrative, you probably will hear that I grew up close to nature. I grew up with animals, with plants around me. I studied on an agricultural university. So I know biology, and I know that our body is also a system, how our cells, the smallest particles, are working together. And it doesn't need somehow a boss to regulate it. We have a system that regulates itself. And I think this is something that we should understand, that the systems we create cannot be different. So the laws of nature, whether we come from biology or from what you were referring to, it's the same. And we can imply them to our organizations. And then the beautiful thing is that then you see them, that they are living things. There's life in them, there's fun in them, there's passion in them. Yeah. I often say that, for example, how I work with organization and I teach this and I wrote a book about this, is that you look at it as a body, yeah, as a whole living system. And then you don't try to fix it here and there. We know what medicine finally ended up with, with all this silo thinking also, and instead of the holistic thinking. So look at it as a whole organization and then ask that body, how would it be when it's better for you? Yeah. When you are a step closer to your purpose. And then we come back to the purpose here. What binds people in an organization together? And then people think, oh, it's it's this pinky, fluffy thing talking about the purpose. Really? Or actually, that's what binds us together. We might forget it. We might think that we actually just go into a workplace to do our work to earn money. But come on, people, go beyond that. Yeah. So, and then if we can look at organizations as living systems, then we see all the beauty that lies in them. Their ability to fix themselves, their ability to constantly evolve, their ability to interact with the environment, so that not looking just inwards, but in constant interaction with our customers, our partners, subcontractors, society, government, environment. And in a way, it's super complex. And in a way, because it's the same laws of nature that rule this, suddenly it's super simple also.
But this ability to evolve is only valid if the hypothesis of changing the paradigm, how things are working in the context of organization is possible. If they are not willing to change processes, way of doing things, or following up the rules, and at the same time wanting change, it will not happen. Elvira, can I ask you a question that I had in my mind? So we have been talking about the concept of dehumanization during change, and I want to bring it back to the human. So you mentioned in your book that context defines our behavior. And I'm thinking about the human. So how can employees leverage this understanding of context defines our behavior to navigate the roles and careers more effectively? So let's put aside the organization. We are talking about the people, the cells making the organization.
We can't put away really the context because that's the organization, and I have to come back to this, which is our agreements. Yeah. And here comes the really interesting thing with that. How our agreements are. Okay, let me come back to the definition and then I can kind of refer to that. Yeah.
Okay.
So instead of designing an organization, but most organization design professionals think that our job is, we actually have to realize that every organization has a design at any given time. And that design is actually our explicit and implicit agreements about two things. What is the work that we have to do now and how we are going to do that. Now, in the how, so what is the work that will be defined by the strategy? Yeah, you can break it down, sub-strategy, stuff like that. But how we are going to do it, there are some dimensions of it, which even McKinsey is using J. Gilbride's STAR model, help us to understand. So our agreements around the processes, our agreements around the governance and who makes the decisions or not. And these are usually the ones which are not explicit agreements. We just accept that if we have a management, they make the decisions. Yeah, so that's already an interesting part. The structure of the organization, so how we group work, what do we reinforce, what behavior that will be hugely, hugely important in defining how people behave, and how do we treat people in the organization. And then maybe to explain it with one of my favorite examples, I was working in this HR team, leading the learning and development team. And one day somebody charged into our space and she said, "Oh my God, Elvira, immediately you have to find a provider who teaches our directors how to think strategically." And I'm like, okay, yeah, I understand what you're saying, but are you saying all of our directors are not good at strategic thinking? Yeah, all of them. You should find a good training company who can teach them how to do that. And then this is when kind of the alarm has to ring in your back of the mind. Yeah, is really our procurement process or succession process so bad that we promote people to become directors who don't know how to think strategically? There might be something else there. And then this is exactly what I'm referring to. And I started digging around a little bit. What's going on here? And you won't believe what I found. We contracted with our directors with a 1-year terminal contract. So they had a fixed term contract for 1 year. So what do you expect from people? Are they going to think strategically for long term, start projects that might not manifest within a year? Of course not. So it's a systemic agreement that we made. Who made it? Not the whole organization. HR made it. Yeah, it's nice when you find out your colleagues. And then I had to tell them, look, guys, it's not a training that we need. It's the length of the contract. If you change that, and I understand for whatever reason, when they are promoted the first year, we need a fixed terminated contract. But once you extend it, make it endless. I mean, then people invest into their positions, into their teams, into long-term thinking, long-term projects. Ta-da! Yeah, and that's a difference. And tons of things in organizations are done in order to change the culture. And I know that's your topic, Ivan, also. And we try to change the people to change the culture.
Wrong.
We have to involve the people to talk about what behavior would be helping us to realize our current strategy and support to fulfill our purpose. But to make it happen, we actually have to tweak the system. We have to change our agreements. Yeah. And if we change our agreement, and that's us also, yeah, again, coming back to that, nobody else can do it better than the people working in the organization. And then here I come back to the evolution of the individual. So this is why it's super important to know that every change in every organization, small or big, starts with the one person who notices something that, oh, guys, we could do this better or differently.
Mm.
And if you look after your people, and by your people, I don't mean your employees only, yeah. But if you look after your people and they feel confident enough to raise these issues and they're not going to kind of get a slap for kind of criticizing how we are doing things, but you have open ears for this, then they can convince their team to start doing something differently. They can experiment with that, and that will have an influence on the process, and the process will have an influence on the organization. So my point is, any one of us can start a change in an organization, but instead of complaining, start doing something differently.
Hmm.
That's it.
And Elvira, so it is quite powerful. And I think that if somebody needs to remember anything about this episode, is about the idea of changing the agreement. And that idea that allows you to have results from the beginning. So whenever you start wanting to change something in your company, change the agreement before you contract a consultant, before you start doing these trainings for the people so that they learn you how to behave, as you said, with new cultures. But still there is no processes, and I have seen it same as you. So I have seen the example about the 1 year contracts. I have seen the examples where you have to train people about new behaviors to align with the culture, but these behaviors are not reflected in any talent review, and they don't want to change the talent review because it's about outcomes, it's about results, and they don't want to put behaviors in a talent review. And that I found it like, so why the hell people would spend time doing something if there is nobody's going to look at them? What?
Yeah, and maybe just kind of a last thought, Ivan, that before the conclusion we take is that we don't need consultants anymore. That's not true. We do need consultants, but the role of a consultant should be different. We're talking about creating agile, adaptive organizations, but the consultancy firms and people in consultancy roles still hold on to the knowledge and just give as much as the client needs. If you want to create organizations where the power is distributed, then us consultants have to be able to distribute our knowledge and tools as well.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So again, be the change yourself.
Mm-hmm.
Um, yeah, and kind of that's the journey I'm on. So of course, I still work a lot with client organizations, but even there, the idea is not to solve their problem. The idea is to elevate them in the evolution to the next level, and in the process, give them the tools so next time they don't need you. They can do it by themselves. And that's why I have created a course that I'm teaching. It's an internationally accredited organization design course, Native in Change. And that's why I'm trying to write the book so that it can get to a lot more people that, hey guys, don't wait for change or don't be the victim of changes. Be the change you want to see, and you can. Yeah.
I love the fact that I totally agree that the job of the consultant is so that people learns how to do it on their own. It's not to stay the longest possible
No.
time. I'm going to be putting the link to your course certification because I think a lot of people are going to be benefiting to learn on their own how to do it. Or if it is not that you are going to implement it, at least to know how to brief correctly a consultant so that he does the job that he's paid to do, right?
Yes, absolutely. Yeah. So change your
Elvira,
expectations also.
you have to tell me a little bit more about your upcoming book. I'm really interested. You told me about it. I had some peeks, readings here and there. Tell me more.
Well, the book actually, it's my first book, so I'm also experimenting and learning a lot on the go. I knew what I want to write into the book. It's basically what I'm teaching also in the course. I see how I can teach it, so I know it has a lot of stories in it. But as a learning process, I wrote a book that the manuscript was 300 pages. So my wonderful editor very nicely told me that if we put some illustrations into it and structure it nicely and lightly, it's going to become a 600-page book. Now, nobody reads a 600-page book. So it's actually going to be two books. And the first one is coming out somewhere in May, hopefully this year. What I can show you is that it's already in a phase that it has a cover. Yeah.
Oh, your baby.
Yeah, my baby is here sitting with me. So the title is Go Beyond, and it's a solution-focused pocket mentor for work evolutionists so that you can start transformations today. And the first part is mainly about these theories I was talking to you. So to help the reader shift or change the glasses to see organizations and living systems. And it also gives tools, kind of an introduction into the solution-focused approach, how you can contract and recontract regularly with your team members as a leader, what kind of performance motivation talks you can have with your colleagues, that it supports their professional evolution and it connects together the company, the team, and the work evolution with the individual. Yeah, it sounds complicated, but it's super simple. And it also has tools for teams. How to start a team in a way that it becomes energized and high performing in no time. This is one of my favorite fields. And of course, with teams, I'm not talking about teams who are in the same boxes in the formal structure. You can use it there as well, but you can use it also for project teams, people who should be working along the same process, people working on the same product or on the same service in your organization. So start treating them as a team. And I've actually created a lot of these series of questions, canvases, stuff like that, which with the help of Superflow, we even have an online version of it, and that is already available free of charge. So your listeners, if they would like to go, I hope you put the link in as well, Ivan.
I will.
There is a high-performing team flow where they can go through the process, and I'm also helping the facilitators how to facilitate a process, what to do when your team is new, whether it's a virtual team or face-to-face, what tools you can, what conversations you need to have to make the most important agreements. And here we come back to the beginning of our conversation. What is the work right now and how we are going to do that as a team?
Here's my thought. I don't think that this is a book exclusively for human resources. I think that the majority of people that would benefit is a manager, a leader of a team, because the changes sometimes start with little revolutions here and there. And if you want to change the people on the top, show him what you can do. And if you use the book, the advices, the recommendations, the cases, the tools that you are delivering, that would be impressive to start this evolution or revolution of the workplace. Elvira, thank you very much for spending time with us. It was lovely. So I'm going to put the links to one, the Superflow, because that is quite practical to go and start doing instead of overthinking. Yeah. That is something that is quite important. I'm going to put some of the links in order to reach you out, your LinkedIn, your website, and the link to the certification program, because that is something that is quite useful.
Yeah, that is also, so it's not just kind of Elvira's great ideas. You can actually do the course and become an internationally certified organization design professional. And you don't have to be a consultant. Yeah, so that's the whole point also. It's for people who work in organizations.
That's good. Elvira, thank you very much. Have a lovely, lovely day.
Thank you very much, Ivan.